And we'll gladly enter the van. Don't worry.
Okay, so you left the hot teacher role for hot musician role.
That's not the Holy Whisks.
I wrote music that can flip a bitch. That's all I could come up with.
Music that stirs up your soul.
Why did I want to get kidnapped? Why was I okay with being murdered by this guy with blue eyes?
Do so many Mad Libs on tour, so we're ready
Yeah.
for this.
So, from a scale of 1 to 10, how uncomfortable are you?
Listen to Manipulator and you really ask yourself, are you the one who's been manipulated or are you the manipulator?
Welcome to Unshut, a place where if at any point you feel like you need to shut the up, don't.
All right.
Hello.
All right, take two. How are we looking now?
Yeah, everything is good
Looking
now.
good, sounding good. You're not freezing and glitching out, so
Oh
that's a
my
plus.
gosh, I'm sorry if I got stuck on a fucked up angle. You had to see my not good side.
No,
No,
no.
you look great at every angle.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's also my first time in so many months since I've done a recording out in my living room. I'm usually in the studio, so it's like back to the old days before I had a studio room.
Yeah. So is that where you were initially, the studio room?
Yeah, and we've been getting a lot of like random, whenever it gets cloudy out here, for some reason, it just, my network in there starts to mess up. So I don't know what's going on with
Yeah,
it.
Weird. Sorry to hear that. It's annoying.
No, it's all good. You guys are out in LA now, right?
Yeah.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. Texas.
Nice.
We just we actually moved to LA from Texas. We were down in San Antonio.
Amazing. So it's funny because that's exactly how we were going to break the ice, other than the fact that my connection was fucking up and I literally just did the most cardio I've done in my entire life, resetting up in the living room. So, how we're going to break the ice real quick is I want to settle this kind of debate that goes on in my family because we're originally from California as well. So, we're West Coast out in Texas now. Something that drives me fucking nuts, and I'm curious if you guys have any opinions about this. Tex-Mex is not the same as Mexican food, and it drives me nuts when people are like, let's go get Mexican, and then they go get Tex-Mex. Have you guys noticed a difference in food since leaving Texas to go to the West Coast?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I would tend to agree that Tex-Mex, it's a different separate genre of Mexican food, right? It's its own thing. And I think that in LA, you can't really find that same kind of Mexican food that you can find in Texas. And I think the food in San Antonio was just, it was very special. It was very different. I mean, there's obviously incredible food of all styles out here in LA, but I do miss the tacos from San Antonio. I mean, it's just, it's the best.
Amazing. Thank you for winging that response for me. I know I caught you off guard with it.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
So very quickly, because something that I also struggled with per, doing, I don't know if per is the right way to say it, but while I was doing some research on the both of you guys, because you both are brothers, I couldn't figure out who was who. And I am so sorry about that. So who is who?
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Cody.
Amazing. So is the easiest way for me to remember is Cody is with the blue eyes, Kyle's with the not blue eyes. Am I correct?
Yeah,
I have the
basically.
not blue eyes.
Perfect. Because we are going to bring up those blue eyes a little bit later, I promise. So
Okay, sweet.
work with me here, okay?
Yeah, I'll be ready.
So perfect. So you guys are originally from New Orleans, then of course moved out here to Texas to go to school before making the move to LA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you guys both born in New Orleans?
Yes, we both were.
Yeah.
Metairie, Louisiana, technically, but that's New Orleans.
Okay, very cool. And if I'm not mistaken, I was reading that one of you guys got your guitar in the fifth grade, and that's what kind of started this whole journey together before you guys went on to do some other bands and then came back together. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I was about 10 years old or 11, and I just, asked Santa for a guitar, and he came through, and the rest is kind of history. That's just how it started. Like, I think actually, like, we kind of started and then fell off the train, like, didn't really know what we were doing, and then Kyle went to like his friend's house and learned how to read tabs, and then it was, the world was our oyster from there, because then we could learn the stuff that we were listening to, and yeah, that really opened up the kind of more creative side, less
Yeah.
boring like watching tutorials and all that. It was like we could figure out how to play the songs that we wanted to play.
Oh, for sure. Who approached who when it came to pursuing this duo together? Obviously, you guys had already dabbled in music together apart with other, stuff when you guys were younger, but whose idea was it to actually come together and say, listen, let's actually pursue this together?
Yeah, I would say it was mine. I was in bands growing up in high school, and then Cody and I also had like a previous band that was happening like through college and stuff, and then that didn't work out, and we were going our separate ways in lives, working different jobs. Like I was a high school teacher actually, and just like it had been like 3 or 4 years since we had been making music, and I was just like, man, I really miss being in a band and playing music. So I was like, we should do this again, and like let's just do it and have some fun. And the project where it is now just kind of came out of that like resurging urge to just, we have to make some music and be a band again. So yeah.
We're kind of the people that also like can't half-ass things in a way. So like we started the band, we're like, let's just have some fun, let's do this. And then it quickly became, we were like every day after work, multiple hours, like working on the band and stuff. And it just became like, kind of an obsession. And that's where it led to us doing this still today.
Kyle, are you still a teacher now in California?
No, I'm not. I left the teaching profession. I hope to get back to teaching in some capacity, but yeah, not teaching anymore.
Okay, so you left the hot teacher role for hot musician role.
More or less. Thank you.
Amazing. That's very awesome. So another question about your guys' childhood dynamics. Obviously, music has just been a big part of your journey since you guys were growing up, right? But
Yeah.
now today in your adult life, how do you guys juggle your own separate identities in regards to you grew up together, you've moved around together, you're now doing, music together, which a lot of people don't realize that there's branding, marketing, now you're mixing finances. There's so much more that goes to it. How do you guys juggle keeping those identities separate after, doing everything that you're doing together?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it does become difficult at times because we spend so much time together, right, during the week, like pretty much all day, every day, we're kind of working together. But I think just with identities, we kind of have our own separate things that we are doing on the weekends and different friend groups and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of like generally like to take time away from each other on the weekend unless we're playing shows or something. And then, I think our personalities are pretty distinct from each other in a lot of ways. So I think that just helps keep that identity barrier separate. But I don't know. You got anything else to add on that?
Yeah. I would say one, just your comment is very perceptive. Like it is extremely complex behind the scenes, and I think I would say we've been working to make sure, like very consciously, that our identities are more and more unique and separate, and we're combining in ways where we're bringing our own individuality and strength to it. And I think before it was just kind of like we're doing everything and like the roles weren't really defined. And I think the more we've defined and hyper specialized and just said out loud, like, hey, this is actually a strength of mine, or like, I'm not that good at that, that's actually helped us become even better together because we're filling in the gaps for each other, so to speak. So it's a little more like yin and yang than it is like we're just this inseparable whole.
No, that's so beautifully said. And I love that you also brought up the yin and yang because we are going to talk about your merch at the end of this episode. But I do also want to say this real quick because I do think that separation is so important, just, for the sake of everyone's relationship so that brotherly relationship doesn't get fractured above all, right? But something that, what you were just talking about, who is more likely to be aware of when those brakes need to be pumped?
I'd say Kyle for sure.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of self-work and stuff, and so I think I'm very conscious of now. I think growing up, just like in our family dynamics and just as a person, I kind of tended to bottle stuff up more and just be like, I have like a chill, calm exterior, and I was just kind of almost using that to not deal with my feelings or to say how I truly felt because I didn't want to like disturb the status quo. But now I think I've found that saying your needs out loud when you need them is better for everyone in the long run. And so I'm just very conscious of like, hey, I need some extra time today just to work alone, or I think it would be best if like you just, write and send me what you're doing. And then, but also like, hey, let's get in the room together today and like, let's really do this. So just trying to, if we're in the studio every day, working on the business side of the band every day, and we're spending, I just have a studio apartment in LA, so like you can definitely get cabin fever if we're not aware of it. So just trying to monitor and make sure we're functioning definitely as professionals and musicians and artists at our best, but also as people at our best, and just figuring out how to balance that stuff.
Oh, for sure. Do you feel like that self-awareness, that self-discovery that you mentioned in regards to doing work on yourself, do you think that's something that's conveying onto this new EP? Because we're going to break down each track here in a little bit because it's fucking incredible, by the way. But I definitely want to touch on that. Do you think that impacted the depths of this project, if that makes any sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like Cody and I were talking about it, like the EP officially comes out in 10 days, and just thinking back to who I was and where I was and who we were and where we were as artists, as people, as brothers, like when this endeavor began versus how we are now. I'm a completely different human being, I can just honestly say that. And I think the process of going through this, and like, because working with Jamie was just such a blessing, and just he really understood us and knew how to push us in ways that we hadn't been, in like a very positive way, just to get the best out of us. And I do think this EP is definitely the best we've ever done. And just like, I think I've said that the making of this was like an internal Odyssean journey. We've come out the other side just completely different people for the better.
What about when it comes to the writing, Cody? Because I do think that even just, I mean, I'm sure you both collaborate together with the lyrics. It's not just one does one part, one the other. You both, obviously it's a collaboration. The writing on this project is so bold, extremely bold. And I think that it also touches on maybe not necessarily some taboo things, specifically in your song Killer, which we'll talk about right now. But when it comes to the writing, did you find that your self-discovery of who you were today versus when you guys first started was something that reflected this project?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I definitely had a, goal when starting out writing the lyrics for this EP to just kind of one write from like some different perspectives. I think like I've always been a writer that's kind of put honesty above all else when writing, and I think that that can be sometimes a bit of a trap, or it can be difficult thing to navigate. And through this EP, I guess I just wanted to kind of take on that honest perspective, but from other perspectives outside of my own self. So it's not quite as, I guess, like confessional maybe as some of our previous stuff, but I think it's actually stronger writing wise in a way, because it wasn't just coming from such like a personal place, And I think that there are obviously very personal lyrics on there that are coming through, and I am present in all of these characters that are written about on the EP. So I don't know if I fully got away from it. I don't know if I fully achieved the mission, but I think that was kind of like the idea from the start, I guess.
I love that. And I know that like when it came to the self-reflection from the listener's perspective, there's a track we're going to talk about here in a little bit that really and this was the biggest kicker about this song, because it was before I went onto your guys' Instagram. I didn't do any Instagram searching or anything like that until after I listened to your music. And there was one in particular that really did make me think or question, like, damn, why does this song make me feel this way? And it really did make me dig deep, but we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. When it
Okay.
comes to the title of this EP, it's the first line on the first track. Why did we choose that to be the title of this EP?
Okay, so there's a bit of a story there, and it sounds so goofy, the start, but I was trying out meditation, and I'd never really like meditated or anything, but I was trying it out to help with just focus and all the things that meditation brings. And I was sitting there, and it was like a 3-minute session or something, so I was just starting small, and I was just sitting there, and the phrase "I don't want to win" popped into my head. I didn't know what it meant at all at the time. I was in my studio room doing that, and I just jumped up to the computer and made this demo called "I Don't Want to Win," which did not end up making the EP. It was a separate song from Killer, but the verse was what eventually became the verse of Killer. And Jamie had this idea to basically combine that song with the song Killer to put the two together. And that's where the lyric kind of, I guess, made the EP. But then after singing it for a while, like I think sometimes you write a line and you don't really understand what it means. And then over time, it kind of reveals itself. It just became this thought process and kind of entire mode of being like grew out of this one phrase, I don't want to win, because I just kind of felt myself feeling a lot of pressures of the world and of, for better, like for lack of a better term, like society or just other people, just anything that goes against maybe who you actually want to be. Like that feeling is kind of represented by the phrase, I don't want to win. Like you're forced to be in this game of life, but sometimes you just don't want to be. You just want to simply exist. And I think the phrase somehow like represented something much larger than just the idea of not wanting to win, you know?
No, I couldn't have even said that any better because what I got from it was there's a little bit of rebellion in that line. And I thought it was very clever after the fact when I went to go do some snooping around on your Instagram, where you talked about the inspiration that happened about basically a darker perspective and not always the good winning. So basically, like an evil kind of like, character or something. I'm sure you know exactly what post I'm talking about, but I think that that is really what I loved about that track in particular. And I'll read to you what I wrote because I like to journal a lot on the show whenever I review people's music and I do all the fun stuff for the show, okay?
Okay.
Great. Let's
So
hear it.
I journaled this question. Why do you think the dark perspectives aren't written about? Because they reveal something about us? Maybe we're afraid to either admit, confront, or put out there for someone else to see. And this goes along with writing songs about evil and not good. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
there's like music as a whole. I think a lot of people use music as an escape, and maybe sometimes music isn't a tool for reflection to a lot of people, and for some people it is. But I think when you're writing about evil, you're taking people to a very certain place, and maybe some people don't want to go there. Maybe those truths, as you say, are a bit, harder pills to swallow, or maybe they're just not as pleasant to listen to. But I think that there is something to be really found and discovered about the human experience just by writing about things that are a bit on the darker side. Maybe I think there's a lot of depth there to explore, and I think it's just something interesting that needs to be talked about. And I think like in movies and other medium like books, there's just so much written about kind of the bad guys, and there's not as much in the musical world, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that because I feel like it's almost like a paradox a little bit in our society, like that. I feel like in movies, cinema, I mean, of course, there's lighter stuff, but a lot of what's heralded, like, I don't know if you saw The Penguin on HBO, but like that is like the epitome of dark gangster. And like that's a story that we just gravitate towards as viewers on television. And then I feel like in music, there's almost like less of an opportunity to write in a style like that. It's almost frowned upon, or people are like, this isn't fun. And there's just kind of almost like a double-edged sword as far as like what's expected in each respective art form necessary, you know. And it's so it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about with the question you brought up.
Do you guys feel like this was also some form of foreshadowing future projects when it comes to other, what some people would call darker or taboo topics that you guys are wanting to explore with your sound?
I mean, it could be like, I think that it was a really good exercise, especially like the song Killer, getting into that kind of mode and writing something. Like Killer is an interesting song because it's kind of dancing between like two worlds. Like it's very serious and heavy, but then there's also like playful and almost like goofy lyrics on that song. And I think that that's something that I want to explore more in the next collection, is just kind of like contrast within every piece to a song lyrically, creating contrast, like these kind of highbrow, lowbrow ideas or dark and light ideas all in one song. And then musically, organic and electronic or artificial elements, like combining those things and making them kind of go against each other and seeing how that can make an interesting sound.
Yeah, and I think too, it's if it's foreshadowing anything, it's probably just the sound of the band to come and like we want to. The mission from the start of this EP was like, let's really find our sound, you know, and just become the Holy Knives, like truly. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of like starting to lay the foundation of like where we can go from here sonically. And with Jamie from the start, we were talking about how do we incorporate like the fact that we're from New Orleans? How do we incorporate that we lived in Texas and make nods to that? And like, how do we bring in now that we live in LA and just kind of combine the sound of all the geographies we've lived into? And so that was like, you know, part of it. And I think finding those pieces and putting them into the music to me just makes it feel like really authentic and cool and a little more special as far as what we've done, you know.
For sure. I want to also highlight the music video real quick because it was so fucking sick.
'Cause I'm a killer, baby. Oh, I'm a killer, baby. I'm a killer,
Thank you. Yeah, we love it.
No, it was done so beautifully. And again, this is what I journaled. This is where we're going to talk about Cody's eyes real quick. Okay. So sorry if this makes you feel uncomfortable or cringy, but actually, I'm not sorry. It's just part of the show. Okay. I said, such a sick music video. Honestly, I would be okay with him murdering me. Pull up in a van, say, hey, check out these knives. And I would be right there with them. Big, beautiful blue eyes to get in and look at the knives.
I love that. That's amazing.
So, from a scale of 1 to 10, how uncomfortable are you?
No, I'd say like a 1 or 2. I'm not that uncomfortable. It's okay. I take it as a compliment, you know?
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking it as a compliment. I sometimes cringe at the shit I journal. I learned very early on the show that whenever I would start to filter some of my notes, they wouldn't make for good highlights for the listeners to listen. And then I started to realize that those were the moments where people were like, well, I want to see what the music video is all about. So now I just keep everything and I just leave it unfiltered. So I embarrass myself all the time.
Yeah, that's
Look,
that's
it's
awesome.
not every day that someone gives you such a compliment as like, I would love to be murdered by you. Like that's
True, true. Yeah, and I love the unfiltered journaling. I mean, that's what the journal really should be. It should be
Yeah.
unfiltered.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. When it comes to the next track on this project, it's called Damned. Do you guys feel like this is kind of a very clever way to also talk about your artistic journey? You know, your art, your talents being a curse, but also a blessing in disguise. I noticed that, you know, I come from the choreography world and, you know, I do a lot with the performing arts, and something that I've had a really tough time conveying when I talk to people that don't pursue their artistry is how the mind never stops. My mind is constantly running on creativity. It's almost like taking a drug. I go from 0 to 100 and then I crash, and it's really hard to explain that to people. Did that have anything to do with this song?
I think that the damned and blessed idea is a lot of different things at once. And I think that is part of it, you know, like feeling like pursuing this life choice to go all in on music is like the most beautiful thing I can think of doing, but it's also very hard at times, you know, and hard to navigate mentally. But I also think it's just, as I've had time to reflect on the song, I think it is in some ways about how we create and perceive our lives as this big, very grand and epic thing with these, you know, triumphs and failures and whatever. But really, our own lives are just that. They're just alive, and we should try and be happy with the life that we're given and try to appreciate it for what it is rather than looking at it from this super epic lens. And like, my own triumphs, failures, whatever feelings in this internal world is not truly this huge and epic thing. Like, I'm just another person in a world of many, many people, and we're on this planet, and we just get this one life and just gotta enjoy it while we can.
How do you feel about that when it comes to that message, Kyle? When it comes to the fact that there's more to it, but yet in a way, while saying there's so much more to it, it's also saying appreciate without those triumphs, without that journey, right? You're simply just being. How do you connect to that, hearing your brother say that?
I mean, I really connect to it. You know, I think that just jumping off what he said, I think all of life is kind of these multi layers existing at once. So at once, our lives are an epic with triumphs and failures. You know, at once we are just not the main character, and we're just one person in the sea of people, and in the universe where we're just, you know, a speck of dust on a grain of sand on the beach, you know. And then on even another plane, like, our names don't even matter, you know. We're just being. Like, I'm actually tying it back to the fact that this whole EP as a framework came from Cody meditating, you know, and that like the act of meditation is to strip back those layers of your essence and the projections that you consider yourself, and just like let go of all that. And, you know, when you're not feeling at all, you feel best. Like, it's exactly that and in the same sense. So I definitely connect with it. And I also connect with, I kind of come from the school of thought that like every song, like every piece of art, in a sense, is a commentary on the artistic process itself. So I definitely think it's kind of about performance too, that, you know, sometimes you're working and nothing's working and you are like, what the hell, this sucks. And then other times you're like on top of the world and you're like, this demo sounds so amazing, you know. But the best moments in life and definitely in the artistic process is just when you get into the flow state and you're not thinking, you're not feeling, you're just going for it. And I think that's, you know, part of the layer of the meaning, for me at least, that I take away too.
When it comes to the next track, because it ties into what you're saying, and honestly, I tend to not necessarily mishear a lot of things, so I try to not let my interpretation of a song or music like that really impact to the listeners because I want them to listen to it on their own. But I thought it was kind of clever that you're talking about the meditation process, and the next track on this one has the word rest in it, and I'm cheesing about it because I'm like, God, I sometimes I wonder if my questions in regards to a song, the artist is like, bitch, you did not nail it. That's not where we were going with it. But the next track on this project has the word rest in it. When it comes to this track still not being released, but you know, it's part of the EP, was that intentional? Was there something about this song that made you guys almost want to save the best for last?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like in a full circle way, because Let Me Rest was actually the first song that we sent to Jamie, like as a produced out demo, and that got him like really excited about working on the rest of the stuff together. So it's kind of the one that started the whole process, and it's also the one that's gonna kind of end the whole process. And I think it does have that really final feeling, you know, like the themes are just finally coming to rest and getting away from whatever you're running from. And I think that that's like kind of a perfect ending to the story of rolling out this whole EP. So I think it was intentional in that way. And I don't know if like the title was part of that, but I think it just has that feeling when you listen to it. Like it feels really final. But interestingly enough, like on the track listing, we didn't put it as the last one because we wanted the EP to kind of end on like the celebratory feel of Manipulator. You know, I think we just like that as an artistic choice. And it's kind of like going back to how things are done in New Orleans, you know, even on funeral days, people are trying to celebrate. So I think like keeping that kind of feeling as what you leave the EP with, you know, it's definitely an interesting choice, but I really love it. So
No, it's really interesting and fascinating to hear you say that because it does make so much sense. And part of what I absolutely loved about Manipulator personally, in regards to reading what your guys' brand and message is as a band, but also this song, this is where I kind of got that self-reflective moment because the final track on this project, Manipulator, really did make me stop and think about who I was as a person in a very clever way. Because to me, this song was extremely sexy. That's all I kept thinking about. I felt empowered. I was listening to it and feeling so fucking good about myself and I was feeling sexy. But then this really got me thinking, why does this song make me feel this way? And this is where I put, welcome to who you've always been. Do I feel sexy when I am in control? This song was so sexy to me. And I think there's something about being, you know, just the word manipulating. You do feel like you're in control. There's control in there is what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah.
no doubt.
I mean, I love what you journaled and felt from that because that's something we've been just talking about in general. Like, what is our music trying to do for people and what's, you know, the lyrical content and the messages? And we've kind of talked consciously, and it's so great to hear you say that because, you know, I've said like we want the music to feel empowering. We want the music to make people feel great and just like let them fully be themselves, you know? And so just it means a lot to hear you literally experiencing that, hearing the music. So thanks for sharing that.
yeah, and also like part of the music is, you know, hoping for self-reflection to come from it too. And I think that you hit both aspects of that. And I think like it is interesting when you listen to Manipulator and you really ask yourself, are you the one who's been manipulated or are you the manipulator? And I think that a lot of people have been on both sides, including myself. So, you know, like there is some questioning of your own self that does have to go on when listening to that song. And like, where have you been? What have you been doing? You know?
But also just to say manipulator, I'll see you later, you know, like pray I won't see you later, you know, you're kind of just taking ownership of your life, setting boundaries, stuff we've talked about, which is
Exactly.
like empowering.
No, totally. And I think that's what was so freeing. It was absolutely a freeing experience listening to this whole project because at the end, I was also able to tie in the topic of killer, right? It's something darker, it's something a little bit more bold when it comes to it. And it really started to make me think a lot of us, we don't explore these dark parts of ourselves or of our thoughts because, again, it's taboo not to, right? We're taught to just paint this really beautiful picture, but I think there's so much empowerment when it comes to realizing why did I want to get kidnapped? Why was I okay with being murdered by this guy with blue eyes? And why did the word manipulator make me feel so, sexy? And it really did took me on a journey where I was like, okay, either I'm just a sick fuck or I really do, I really am getting the message here of not everything that is talked about in music has to be pretty. It has to be dark and bold. And once again, I had another full circle moment because of your band's name and the message that comes with that name. It was piercing. I was literally pierced by your music, as corny as that sounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the mission, is like to make art that really kind of like it exists in its own place. It takes people to a whole other place that doesn't exist anywhere else except in our musical world. So that's kind of always been the mission. It has taken a long time to kind of get there to where we think that we're achieving that, but that's always been the goal. And I think that we didn't really understand that when we first named the band the Holy Knives, but I think it does, like I think our first statement about the band was that we wanted to, use music as a weapon to like ward off reality. And I think that kind of like still carries to this day. We wouldn't use that same language, but like it is all about creating that sense of like maybe it's empowerment, but maybe it's just a place where you can live inside the music and like explore that whole world that exists.
Yeah. And as corny as it sounds, you say pierce you, I say like it cuts you deep, excuse the pun and the corniness, but like we really want music that just hits hard. And that's been the most inspiring music to me when I'm just really honest with myself, is stuff that has that deep power, and that's what we're trying to do as well,
Well, I mean, I couldn't have said the word corny any better because that's exactly what we're about to do next. We're about to do something so corny, so cheesy, but truly inspired by the title and the band's name of the Holy Knives. Okay.
All
So
right.
work with me here. We're going to improv, think quick on your toes. Are you guys ready?
Ready. Born ready.
The Holy Knives, music that cuts through reality to see what's behind it all. I'm going to change your band's name and use kitchen utensils, and I want you to tell me what the message of that name would convey in your music. Does that make any sense?
I think so.
I think so.
I think so.
Let's do a round and see if we get it.
Okay.
Amazing. And I also wrote down some notes in case you get stuck because this is corny as fuck. I take full responsibility and full pride on that. The first one is the Holy Peeler. You guys go first. I'll go next.
Okay, so we're supposed to say what that band name would mean?
Not necessarily mean, but like, for example, the tag of your guys's, on your guys's website is, it says the Holy Knives, music that, like you said, cuts
fill in the
through.
blank.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do so many Mad Libs on tour, so we're ready for this.
Okay.
Amazing.
So, music that peels back the layers of you.
Hell yeah.
I like it.
Amazing. That's definitely exactly what I wrote. Music that peels all the layers off. I love
Yeah,
it.
I think I went somewhere with like peeling off your skin, so I'm glad I didn't answer that one.
The next one I have for you guys is the Holy Scissors.
I mean, I still want to go to cuts there.
Yeah, but music that cuts you in half can cut out shapes of emotions for you, maybe?
Yeah.
Beautiful, because all I could come up with was music that cuts through the bullshit. That's all I could come up with.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
Yeah, love that.
The third one I have is the Holy Whisk.
Music that stirs up your soul.
Yes, I fucking love that.
Yeah. This is good.
I won't even read what I wrote because that just beats it. That's the best one. That's amazing.
We gotta hear it.
Yeah.
That's part of the rules.
I said music that can take all genres and mix them into one.
Okay,
There we
I
go.
like that. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's definitely what
That's part of the mission, really,
Well, and I did also journal next to this one, which is something they do. It's almost very rock, very blues. So I did put that in my notes.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
that's
we should be called the Holy
Whisks.
Whisks. I mean, that's definitely, yeah, part of the mission is to just not be so like narrow in our thinking, about the sound. So,
For sure. The next one I have is the Holy Spoon.
the Holy Spoon, music that can carve out a piece of you for you to eat.
Perfect. I definitely went a little bit more on the emotional route with this, or I guess the touchy lovey one. I wrote music that hugs you and comforts you. So I went like the opposite route in regards to Little Spoon,
Okay.
Big Spoon.
thinking
Okay, I
outside
like
the
that.
box. I
Yeah,
like that.
that's
Yeah.
more creative.
The last one I have for you guys is the Holy Spatula.
Ooh, there's two routes you can go with this. Either music that flips your worldview, like you
Yeah.
flip a pancake,
Yeah.
or you could have like music that somehow, you flattens your inhibitions, flattens your, I don't know,
Sadness.
sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
So perfect. I wrote music that can flip a bitch. That's all I could come up with.
I love that.
Yeah.
A
Amazing.
bitch pancake,
Yeah.
come on.
Tomato, tomato.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much for doing that with me. It's not the last thing we're going to do, but before we wrap up and do the last thing, first of all, thank you again for talking about the EP, breaking some of my interpretations of it and all of the good stuff. But I couldn't have you guys on without talking about your merch because I did some snooping. And usually I'm like, merch is just merch. This is, I think, probably the second time I'll talk about merch on the show. Your shit was dope as fuck. Who designed it? Whose idea? Give me everything.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a few designers in there. One with the yin yang. I'm gonna butcher his name, but it's Louis Alexandre Beauregard. He's from
Canadian.
Canada.
Yeah.
And he's a really amazing artist. We've worked with him on a number of things in the past. Like the EP cover for the Always Gone EP was done by him. And then our most recent thing, The Point, which is like our faces and the knife, that's a designer that we're currently working with named Eric Weitzig.
Yeah.
Hardworth Designs on Instagram.
Yeah.
Hit him up.
Out. Check them out.
And then some of the other stuff was done by me, I guess, but
Yeah.
adding together design elements I've already had, like the one with the Switchblade Heart is from our album cover for Year of the Black Dog, which was done by a great artist from San Francisco called Lil Tuffy.
Yeah.
He did some of our early artwork and we've reinterpreted that into merch. So
Yeah.
I think that's all the things we have.
Yeah, that's
right.
it. And we're working on some new even doper merch right now, so we'll keep you posted. But
Yep.
really appreciate that you liked it so
Yeah,
much.
and we'll be having a vinyl coming with this EP as well. 2 to 3 new shirts, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have some really cool merch. We're actually working on it this week, so excited about that.
Well, the alignment was so perfect because no one told me to talk about merch with you guys. So
Yeah, this is perfect timing.
perfect timing. That's amazing. Real quick, when it came to the yin yang, whose idea was to incorporate that? Because I know you mentioned it earlier on when we started recording. Whose idea was to do that on? I think you guys had it on a hat or something.
I don't remember who exactly came up with the idea, but we've always kind of played with that idea of like dualism or dark and light, yin and yang, like the classic interpretation of that. Like as being a two-piece, we'll do a lot of things where like I'm wearing lighter clothing, he's wearing darker clothing. We just kind of try and go into that light and dark thing. So it kind of made sense to do the yin yang. I don't remember exactly how it came to be for the design because that was a couple of years ago. But
Yeah.
I think it was just sitting up in the studio and thinking on what some cool merch would be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, now that we've, touched on the holy mugs, the holy shirts, the holy hats, the holy everything, can't wait to see what you guys put out for the next merch drop. When can we expect that?
I'd say early 2025. Like January, the vinyl is going to drop. We have an EP release show in LA on
January 23rd.
January
At Gold
23rd.
Diggers.
And we're going to be rolling out the vinyl around then. So shirts will definitely be ready by then. So I'd say, yeah, look out early 2025.
Perfect. I may actually be in LA that week, so I'll probably just invite myself. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be amazing. We'd love to have you. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So if you see me pull up with a van, that's got, hey, check out these cool knives in there, you'll know it's fucking me showing up to
Yeah.
to the venue.
And we'll gladly enter the van. Don't worry.
Amazing. You guys, thank you so much. One, for your time, but two, for going along with all my corny shit. The last thing I want to do, it's going to get just a little bit cornier. But before we do the last thing, very quickly, for anyone that's listening, not watching, that didn't get to see the screen for the intro and all that good stuff, tell everyone where to find you, where to find your music, all those good details.
Yeah, find us on all social platforms at The Holy Knives. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, we're on all those streaming platforms under The Holy Knives, of course. Just search The Holy Knives on Google, you'll find us.
Perfect. The last thing we're going to do, I'm going to need you guys to be a little animated for this one. This is how we're going to close out the episode. I'm going to go first. One of you is going to go second. The last person's going to be the closer. As soon as you say it, we'll end the call. I'm going to say, that's not the Holy Forks. Someone else is going to say, that's not the Holy Give Me a Utensil in honor of the segment we did. Last person's going to go, that's the Holy Knives. Here we go.
You take the second one, I'll close it out.
Okay, got it.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
We're ready.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I
Thank
think I
you.
can see you blushing
glad.
through the screen a little bit, but thank you so
Of course.
much.
Of course, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Really appreciate it.
Of course. I'll definitely keep you guys posted on the air date and all that good stuff, but be on the lookout soon, okay?
All right,
Okay.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. That's not the Holy Forks.
That's not the Holy Whisks.
That's The Holy Knives!
Hey, if you've made it this far, don't forget to follow the socials on the screen or in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. See you next week.